if I want people to come to my party, right? Should I pay people to come to my party? Let's assume you have staking, and staking gets you whatever 10% return. How much of that yield would you give to your delegate for them to participate in governance? Where ZKsync is not, it's not like a 5-year project, right? It's a 100-year project that we want to have in place.
Welcome everyone in our next episode of ZK Talks. This time it's very unique because we have two guests, Rafa and Shelby from the ZKsync Association. Before we jump in, please, can you tell me about the role of the ZKsync Association and the governance team? Some details so people will know how it works.
So thank you so much for having us, Mad Max. Well, my name is Rafa. You may see me in Telegram chats, or I'm sometimes, very rarely nowadays, on Twitter. And I'm part of the governance team at the ZKsync Association. So I'll give a brief overview and then pass it over to Shelby to do a quick introduction and talk a little bit more about the ZKsync Association. So the association is an Austrian Verein, or like an Austrian association, and basically it's an entity. It's a company, a team that is responsible for issuing the ZK token and providing governance infrastructure to support ZKsync. And the ZKsync Association is a little bit special because it's not like other ecosystems where the governance team is part of the foundation or part of the LabsCo. The governance team is independent in the ZKsync Association, really focused on on the infrastructure. And there's 3 members of the governance team: myself, Shelby, and Alicia, focus on protocol upgrades. Shelby?
Yeah, thanks. My name is Shelby. I am the governance experience lead on the governance team. You may have seen me in a number of delegate calls or proposal review calls, and maybe heard my voice on the community call a few times in the past. Just to add to what Rafa said in regards to the governance team specifically within the ZKsync Association, you can kind of think of the governance team as like a connective layer, and also like a utility provider for the governance system. So we uphold the governance framework, help build governance tooling, and make sure that the proper infrastructure is provided and available so that the governance system can be used and works properly. And it also plays a strong role in supporting each of the governance systems actors, and there are 3 key ones. So the Security Council is the first one, the Guardians is a second, and then the Token Assembly, which is the term that we use to describe all of the delegates and token holders within the ZKsync ecosystem. Increasingly, our role intersects also with business development. So I think when a lot of people think of governance, they think of like fund my event, or like fund this this kind of program, I guess, for the ecosystem. But kind of more specifically, the way like focus for governance within the ZKsync ecosystem is honing in a little bit more on the business development side, which is also kind of unique. So helping governance align and empower the go-to-market strategies for the ZKsync protocol and the ZKsync stack, especially in regards to products that we see emerging demand for in the market. So I believe Alex on the last pod, or one of the previous pods you had, Mad Max, mentioned Providiums as one of those kind of market focuses, and also app chains as well, which we can talk a little bit more about later too. And then as part of the broader Elastic Network, ZKsync's architecture of kind of sovereign and interoperable chains that communicate and settle on Ethereum, the Elastic Network allows these institutions and developers to customize their own chain environments without sacrificing interoperability or decentralization. And the decentralization piece is important here because a lot of the chains that are currently existing in the Elastic Network care about the decentralization piece, but especially with these new chains that are coming in. So private institutions for Providiums, for example, they care a lot about the decentralization piece. So governance is kind of adding to an argument or kind of plus point for ZKsync.
One of the things that often comes in is like, okay, so what does this look like in practice, right? Like, so we talk about a lot of that. We have the governance team and we have the governance processes. We want to make sure that ZKsync is and generally governance is available to everyone. The purpose of the ZKsync Association goes a little bit beyond the ZKsync itself, and it's really also about ZK technology and general governance. So in practice, on a day-to-day basis, what Shelby, myself, and Alicia are working on is together making sure that governance, or this decentralized process of making sure the ZKsync protocol exists and is credibly neutral and works well. We have to manage the different governance interfaces, like the voting portal, maintaining and making sure the documentation is up to par. Like Shelby mentioned, making sure that all the different governance bodies are working properly, delegation is working, making sure that proposals are designed correctly and function with the ecosystem overall. So ZKsync Association, nonprofit Austrian Verein or an association. Governance team sits in it, which is different from other ecosystems. It's not the same as everything integrated into the foundation, and really, really focused on protocol security through decentralization and making sure that the programs and kind of the governance system overall really helps build the momentum for ZKsync success.
Yeah, makes sense. But you make it really easier for me because I wanted to ask if it was necessary for ZKsync to decentralizing. Yeah. In fact, you answered that partners was actually pushing on that ZKsync need this. So maybe we can focus on how it's different from other ecosystems like Arbitrum or Optimism.
Well, before we get into that, I do want to talk about a bit about decentralization from a different angle too. The U.S. is also passing legislation now. Like they have the Genius Act. There's a draft of the Clarity Bill, which is changing, and there's new definitions of kind of like what is sufficiently decentralized, which are really, really interesting. But I think the main point here is that, we really believe in the ZK Credo and the values of the ZK Credo. And I think, Shelby, you had mentioned before that governance is the same way you design a protocol to be decentralized so that you can have sovereign ZKsync chains. Governance is also kind of the embodiment of those values. We have governance because we actually believe in the values of the ZK Credo. And this is we don't just talk, we want to be able to walk the walk of making those values a reality.
All right. Sounds great. So the differences between Arbitrum and Optimism.
Yeah. I think maybe just to kind of kick off that discussion, it might be also important to mention for those who are unfamiliar with our token governance process. That's kind of one of the major separating, defining factors, I think, of the ZKsync governance system is the token governance aspect of it. So just to rewind for a second, ZKsync governance governs three components: the ZKsync protocol, the token assembly allocation of ZK tokens, and GovOps, which is kind of like validation or ratification of strategy and other priorities for the ecosystem. But the token governance piece specifically is really unique in comparison to other ecosystems because it does not actually have a treasury of minted tokens, which most other ecosystems do. And why that is interesting and also definitely an advantage for the ZKsync ecosystem is because when you don't have a pool of minted tokens kind of sitting somewhere trying to be managed by a group of delegates or token holders, you remove the kind of risk associated potentially with managing minted funds and minted assets through decentralized governance. But it also allows for a lot more modularity and kind of empowers the final end recipient to decide when and how they receive or mint those tokens. So how it works, high level, is when the ecosystem needs tokens for something, it uses a mint on demand system via simple smart contracts that we call capped minters. So when a token governance proposal passes in the ZKsync ecosystem, you're not executing a transfer of tokens from Treasury to XYZ multisig. You're actually granting minting rights to a cap minter for a specific purpose. And that cap minter can then, or the team or entity that has or individual that has a minting role on that cap minter is able to mint tokens as they need them rather than all at once, or whenever it makes the most sense for them. The cool thing about this is that, well, there's a few cool things about it, and Rafa and I are kind of nerds about this. There's a few cool things about it, and one of them being, first of all, the level of control that it provides the token assembly to be able to also revoke that minting role. In other ecosystems, if you transfer tokens to a multisig and say the program gets canceled, you have to trust that team is going to send them back to the treasury. Where in this case, the token assembly at any time, it has the ability to revoke the minting role and cancel a program. So there's a lot more accountability on that front. The second cool thing to highlight about the cap minter and kind of mint on demand system is that, so over the last few months or since governance has launched, Rafa and I have been working with a series of dev teams to help develop these additional smart contracts that we call minter mods that can be attached to cap minter contracts. And this gives a lot more functionality and modularity and control over how tokens can be minted from cap minters that are approved by the token assembly for a specific token program. This enables kind of like a programmatic enforcement of process or policy or whatever is agreed on in the on-chain proposal, rather than having to kind of trust, a multisig or like some sort of management team or steer code to like manually enforce things. So that it's kind of enabling, so there's like an accountability piece that this cap minter structure unlocks, as well as it's all accountability, but also like just more control and kind of like trust reduction in terms of like how things will be executed, because if it's all programmed on chain, then you don't have to rely so much on trusted parties to run specific programs. One other thing to mention, actually, and it is important in regards to accountability as well, and another piece that sets us ZKsync apart from other ecosystems is the legal accountability side of things that a lot of other ecosystems don't have. So first, there's I guess maybe the first point to start is with ZK GPS. is a separate entity, but kind of affiliated with the ZKsync Association that is responsible for contracting with any program lead or steerco or team at any service provider that is involved in providing services for a specific token program, and also doing KYC or KYB on those individuals. Why would we do that? Well, it enables a legal enforcement and agreement on services to be provided from any steerco or service provider involved with the token program. And otherwise, you're kind of just relying on the on-chain, like, kind of handshake agreement that, yes, we will behave. But this being able to contract through GPS, a ZK GPS, enables this this like legal enforcement of things as well. So if a steerco mints all the tokens and runs, then there's theoretically the legal there's legal action that can be taken from those teams. As well as the KYC, KYB side, making sure that no service provider or participating team is, non-compliant with international financial laws.
I think, so going back to your question on, what sets us apart, I think we have the token mechanic stuff and the cap minters, and we have the treasury, and we have the legal stuff. I like to think about the differentiation, starting with kind of like, governance is value centric. So for example, we have the guardians that we have in place. So the ZKsync governance system, which has three bodies, the Security Council, the Guardians, and the Token Assembly. This system was designed so that the values of the ZK Credo are really embedded into the ongoing governance system. The Guardians are the enactment of that, and they're a veto council that works across protocol upgrades, token programs, or the other governance proposals that Shelby mentioned. So 3 different types of proposals. And I really like that. I think this is like really, really important, because even though like there could be a proposal which is technically correct, let's say a protocol upgrade, it could be not in the spirit of the ZK Credo and like the sovereignty and censorship resistance focus that ZKsync has overall. I particularly really like that. So in terms of differentiation, we talked about no treasury. So we have instead an unminted supply of tokens. We talked about the cap minters. So we're governing rights instead of asset transfers. And there's modular ways to manage those rights. And we talked about the legal design, both from the ZKsync Association, which provides extraordinary membership to delegates. And we'll talk a little bit, but also what we call ZK GPS. So there's actual legal contracts between the governance participants and service providers, not just, sending assets to a multi-sig and then crossing your fingers and saying, oh, I hope it actually gets done.
Yeah, so basically, it's not possible that someone will buy a bunch of tokens, like 1 billion tokens, and will make it proposal, which is completely out of the mind. What for? And let's go and let's mint the tokens. So I think in this case, when there is something about minting, there are safeguards to prevent this abuse. Yeah, so that's definitely good.
Yeah, and also the Guardians can veto it, right? Like if there was a malicious proposal that was like, oh, like I don't know, I want to like take control of the token. You could buy a bunch of tokens and you could try to pass that proposal, and the Guardians would simply be like, no, that's actually bad, right? And then for protocol upgrades, so we haven't talked that much about protocol upgrades yet, which is really what the focus has been over the last year. I think sometimes we talk to folks and they're like, oh, like it feels like ZKsync governance is so slow. And, the ZKsync governance is actually like on-chain protocol upgrades. It's not like fake, like that, we pretend to vote in an off-chain snapshot. No, this is real. And like over the past year, the focus has been to making sure that protocol upgrades can work well. And what that means is we have a token assembly that can vote, and we have a security council that is reviewing the protocol upgrades and has to intentionally execute them. So even if you pass a protocol upgrade, that doesn't mean the protocol gets upgraded until the security council, which includes 12 different members. There's, I think, 8 entities and 4 security expert individuals from around the world. They verify that to make sure that it's technically appropriate and not a risk to the ecosystem. And that's really powerful. And that's really what the focus has been over the last year. Because if we can execute decentralized protocol upgrades, it means that ZKsync can survive, regardless of, if something happens to, the development team or anything like that.
Yeah, it's definitely cool. And what is the flow, the scope, and the implementation of governance proposals?
Mm-hmm.
So like the process of how proposals are drafted, submitted, and then approved on chain. Yeah, I'm happy to take this one.
Maybe, and Shelby, maybe we can talk about 2, right? We can talk about the protocol upgrades, and then we can talk a little bit about token programs.
Yeah. Yep. So as we've mentioned a few times now, there's 3 different things the ZKsync system governance system governs, and each of those 3 things have their own proposal type. And the process for protocol upgrades is slightly different. So we call it ZKsync improvement proposals, or ZIPs, is slightly different than the other 2. So token governance and GovOps, which are token program proposals, and governance advisory proposals. So I'll start more general, and then I'll go into the details or the distinction between ZIPs or protocol upgrades and the other 2. So generally, as it is in many ecosystems, standard process is to, draft your proposal. In that drafting process, we recommend that you reach out to the governance team, so one of us, so we can help make sure that it is aligned with the governance guide or the proposal guidelines, which can be found on our docs for each proposal type, and just to help answer any questions or make sure that the process is easy to understand, also just based on what type of proposal you're trying to draft. The next step is usually posting it on forum for feedback. Possibly before that, even maybe sharing it with a few delegates to get their feedback in advance, just to see if there's anything like glaring maybe to be addressed. But generally, then it's submitted on the forum. It's discussed on the forum. And then once the discussion feels like it's in a good place to move the proposal forward, or to submit it on chain, it is then submitted on chain. How a proposal is submitted on chain within the ZKsync governance system is the proposal threshold is 21 million ZK. So any delegate that has over 21 million ZK or more is able to submit a proposal on.
Well, voting power, not tokens.
Voting power. Yeah. Sorry. Voting 21 million ZK voting power. Yes. Which can be delegated from multiple different delegates, or self-delegated, whatever the case may be. A lot of proposal authors may not have 21 million ZK voting power. So what they do then is they find a sponsor, so a delegate that does have 21 million ZK voting power, and they are able to work together to get the proposal submitted on chain. Once the proposal is submitted on chain, this is where we start to differentiate, but I'll just do general phases first. There's a voting delay period, which means it's submitted on chain, but voting hasn't started yet. Then once the voting delay period is over, there's the voting period, which can range. We actually have kind of a flexible voting period, initial 7 days, and then plus a possible voting extension depending on what point quorum is met in those 7 days. And then the last stage is L2 execution. So if the proposal passes, the proposal will be queued, and then after a 3-day time lock, executed on chain for token programs and for GoOps proposals. Then for protocol upgrades or for zips, there's an L1 approval and execution process in addition to that as well. So, and how that kind of extends for protocol upgrades or for zips is there is a legal veto phase for the guardians. So at this point, I believe it's 3 days, Rafa, the guardians are able to veto a protocol upgrade if they feel that it is in any way, shape, or form going against the ZK Credo, or they see potential legal issues with it, etc. If there's no veto, it can move on to the final approval phase with the Security Council. And the Security Council has 30 days, up to 30 days to review the suggested protocol upgrade and make any and raise any concerns if needed. But then if there are no concerns, the Security Council will approve the proposal and it will be executed on L1. So that's kind of the general process. There are some distinctions and parameters in like the voting delay is slightly shorter with protocol upgrades than it is for token program proposals and governance advisory proposals. But we don't have to go into those details. I will point you to the docs. So if you want to look at all of them individually, it's docs.zknation.io, and you can find them under the proposal type overview tab on the sidebar menu.
Something that a lot of people don't know about is, you know, when we think about governance, like what is actually going on under the hood, and I'll talk about protocol upgrades because to me, this is like where we've been focusing and where the most of the kind of effort has gone into right now. So all of ZKsync contracts, well, not all of them, but the majority of them, the ones which are in scope of governance, are basically like have a type of like admin that is called a protocol upgrade handler. This is like a layer 1 contract on Ethereum. So think about this like as the master boss. And this boss can't do anything. They can't execute like a code without first the Security Council saying, yes, execute this code, and the token assembly saying, yes, execute this code, and the guardians not saying, don't execute this code, right? So you kind of have like 3 bodies. So you got the protocol upgrade handler, which is kind of like the boss contract. And then you have, and that boss contract though is governed, is controlled by the decentralized process ZKsync. So the token assemblies delegating to the delegates for voting, the guardians having veto power, and then the Security Council kind of pressing the button. And then that protocol upgrade handler kind of like does the thing for upgrading the contract. So how does this work in practice? So the Security Council is pressing the button on the protocol upgrade handler, and then the token assembly is voting on a contract which is the boss's boss or the protocol governor. That's actually what you vote on in kind of like the interface, the voting portal. That's like what delegates do. So it's really fascinating because, you know, I think from an outsider, all you see is a vote button, right? Or a delegate, you delegate and vote. But actually under the hood, what's happening is you're voting on this contract, which then like sends the information from ZKsync era to Ethereum mainnet. Then that information is validated, so verified that it's been voted on. Then you have the veto period, and then you have the Security Council kind of presses the button, and then this boss protocol upgrade handler contract kind of like, you know, executes the thing, which is super cool. so all of that is abstracted, right? Like from a delegate, the only thing you see is submit proposal, vote. From a guardian, the only thing you see is, do I want to veto or not? And from the Security Council, you see the call data, which is like what the protocol upgrade is, and a button that says sign to execute type of thing, like a multi-sig. Really sophisticated stuff. I mean, DAOs started like, the current wave of DAOs, this system started back in 2020, 2019. And it's, it's been 5 years and the system is quite clean right now. Although, who knows what comes next, right? It'll probably be a different paradigm.
Yeah, but this sounds definitely interesting.
Yeah, we like to nerd out about it. It's a little bit.
I like it. It's fun.
But it's right.
I actually did miss a very important parameter to share in describing how the process of how a proposal is approved, and that would be quorum. So anyone who has participated in governance is familiar with the concept of quorum, but quorum is the kind of minimum amount of participating voting power required in order for a proposal to be deemed as valid and to kind of like move forward. There's kind of like a minimum amount of participation required to ensure that a proposal isn't, submitted and like maybe like a few people vote on it and they vote in favor for it and it's passed. It's a security measure essentially for the governance system to make sure that there's enough people paying attention and have reviewed and voted on it before moving forward. So, and the quorum for the ZKsync governance system for all three proposal types is 630 million ZK. So each proposal has to receive at least 630 million ZK voting power participating in that vote in order for it to pass. And it also has to receive a majority of in favor votes. So so as long as there's minimum 630 million ZK voting power participating, and that can be spread out across dozens and dozens or hundreds of delegates, and it usually is. And it has to be a majority of in favor for the proposal to pass. And it's also maybe something we can talk about too, Mad Max, is it kind of highlights the importance of participation in governance and making representative active. Yeah,
because as a ZKsync delegate myself, I know that my vote matter in governance system, but why should others be more active and participate and speak more about governance and the proposals? That can be quite interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I've mentioned this a few times on the community calls as well. So if you've heard this spiel before, apologies, but I'm always happy to repeat it. It is, if an ecosystem does not have the substantial and active delegate base to be participating in governance, you are unable to pass proposals. What does that mean for ZKsync governance, even just in this moment? We will not be able to pass all of the protocol upgrades that are delivering all of these cool and amazing features like gateway, additional interop functionality, and all of these critical version, all of these critical version change, protocol upgrades and otherwise, also for security and stuff, we will not be able to pass. So that is, that's kind of a big point. And it's not only that beyond protocol upgrades, there's, all of the other proposals and, token program proposals and stuff to be thinking about too. You won't be able to deploy these programs. So I've kind of said in the past, like, even if you're not wanting to vote yourself, if you don't want to be a delegate, you don't want to be constantly keeping up with governance, etc., it's highly encouraged that you delegate your voting power to a delegate who is already actively participating. Key point, actively participating, and so that your voice can still be represented by someone else in the ZKsync governance system. So Yeah, and yeah, exactly. So if you can either become a delegate yourself and actively vote and participate individually, or delegate your voting power to someone else who is actively participating, so we can ensure that these critical protocol grades are being passed, and also able to sufficiently deploy any token programs in the future as well.
All right. I will cut this question if you don't want to answer. Is there any reward planned for the delegates to participate in governance, or nothing is on the table right now?
Well, I mean, I think this is a really interesting question. I think that there's in a lot of other ecosystems, well, not a lot. There's some that have passed like delegate rewards. Well, Shelby and I did a bunch of interviews with a bunch of different people, with governance teams, with foundation teams, with delegates themselves, and different types of delegates. And what we actually found out was that there wasn't an impact of delegate rewards with quality participation in governance. Actually, what was happening was that people were trying to game the system. They're trying to get paid more. And so what they did was they posted on Discord more. They tried to vote more, they tried to vote. I even talked to delegates who created multiple delegate profiles so they could charge twice in terms of compensation. And so the question, I was on a panel a little while back around like delegate rewards, and there are two things that came to mind. One was, look, we need to be able to compensate people for participating in governance in some way, right? But we need to do it in a way that doesn't cause more problems than solves them. And right now, what we've seen is that as soon as you introduce like a payment for delegates, you get a bunch of people who want to get paid, but who aren't actually interested in like protecting the ecosystem. They just want to get tokens to dump them. And then what happens, right? Then the question is, how do you design a system so that you still have delegate engagement, but you actually don't have these like negative side effects of like a bunch of spam? We had, even without delegate incentives right now, ZKsync, we had quite a couple of situations in the Discord forum where people were posting AI generated like summaries and responses because they were trying to get like reputation points from governance. And so it's really top of mind. I think we talk about this like every 2 weeks, Shelby, we talk about this topic. It's like we're constantly like asking the question because a lot of delegates ask, and we haven't been able to like crack the thing and find a good solution. Yeah, I don't know, that's like some of the stuff. I mean, I'm being honest with you, like we have like talked to a lot of people about this, and like every time someone recommends something, it's like, oh, it's too complicated. Someone there was one group that approached us that said, oh, we'll do your compensation program. We will charge you $100,000 a year to manage the compensation program. I was like, okay, so we're gonna pay you to do the compensation program. Shouldn't we spend that money like on other stuff, like, I don't know, a Providium prize or something like that? I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely been a topic of conversation, as it is in every ecosystem, in this decentralized space. I guess maybe just to mention something that we have been focusing on in regards to delegation, trying to activate participants who already have skin in the game, who are already motivated or interested in or like genuinely interested in the future and development of ZKsync. And one kind of work stream that we've been working on over the last few months is trying to figure out ways that we can activate ZK chains. There are already a lot of ZK chains or ZKsync chains who are participating and active in governance. But there's a few who are not. They have a delegate profile but aren't participating. And there's also a few, and especially newer chains, who don't have a delegate profile and also don't have any voting power. So trying to figure out ways that we can support them and encourage them to, get into the governance system, to create a delegate profile, start advocating for, delegation for themselves and things like that, just to make sure that they are able to be seen and heard, because they are the ones that have the most to lose from the governance system. Really, if a proposal, if a zip, like a protocol upgrade doesn't pass, they might not get this really cool feature that they were planning on having going forward. Token programs, specifically for 2025, it was ratified in GAP 1, which was a governance advisory proposal earlier this year, in terms of priorities for spending from the token assembly kind of pool of tokens. Protocol security and sustainability was number 1, but number 2 was bolstering the growth of ZK chains, ZKsync chains, and making sure that they have the resources and infrastructure and things that they need, but also, designing programs that target them specifically as the recipient or beneficiary, to make sure that we're supporting the folks who, are kind of doing the most in the ecosystem for this year.
Yeah. I like to think about the problem like, if I want people to come to my party, right? Should I pay people to come to my party? Because as soon as I offer to pay people to come to my party, I might not get the right people to show up. It's not that I don't want people to have a good time. And maybe a party isn't necessarily the right thing, because we also have to think about like the governance system is a real responsibility, and like delegates need to be engaged in an honest and like professional way, like with expertise, right? And I think that's kind of like where the tension exists. Like, how do you maintain engagement from the right people? And that's kind of, it's a tough puzzle. We've been watching the experiments in like a lot of other ecosystems and seeing kind of how it plays out. Because we want to adopt something that actually works. And, truth be honest, like it's a lower priority today than do protocol upgrades pass? Do we have gateway interop, right? Do we have, like a Deutsche Bank launching their mainnet Providium? Like that's obviously like priority number 1. And we need to make sure that protocol upgrades pass. But we keep on running into this tension, which is as soon as we look at an ecosystem that is providing incentives, then suddenly the people who are voting are often not the people who are actually the partners with skin in the game in the protocol, and are constantly like, putting more sell pressure, like selling the token. So yeah, something to think about, and we don't have a good answer for.
Yeah, sure. From my perspective, I like the idea with elastic chains and more participation in governance, and seeing Abstract, Soulful, and others that they care.
Yeah,
it will be really great. I have 3 points now. What innovation are coming, governance, then if you can share some proposals in pipeline which are not published yet, and then if when there is more voting power on the market, if the quorum will be higher. These are 3 points I need.
3 points. All right. I'll talk about before we jump into these, because I think, Shelby, you probably have some points around the innovation piece. I want to talk about where we are today. Okay, so what's happened over the last 12 months? we had the launch in September. And, I started working on ZKsync Governance almost a year before the launch happened. So since October 2023. And then we finally launched in September, and that was a huge moment, right? We wanted to make sure that it worked. That was a couple months after the airdrop. Then we went through what we call the validation phase. So this is kind of like making sure that that we can pass proposals on every single one of the governors, making sure that we have that the delegate profiles are working, making sure that the forum and the discourse posts are working, making sure that proposal templates, the cap minter, we had to launch a second version of the cap minter for better security and better composability. So that was a lot of the validation phase. And that we kind of wrapped that up in February this year, I would say, February, March. And then we moved the last 6 months have been kind of focused on trying to untangle where we want to where do we need sustainability? So we know we had the Security Council proposal. The Guardians proposal just went up 4 hours ago. And then we still need probably a couple more proposals, even for governance infrastructure for the next couple of years. We'll probably need to have another space to discuss that one because we're still in the works. But that one's big on sustainability. But sustainability isn't enough. We need momentum. We need growth. And right now there's a big debate going on. I've heard snippets of people discussing what proposals can we get to really drive Providium, and what proposals do we need to do for ZKnomics to make it a success. So another proposal that is in the works is we want to add a public burn function to the ZK token. Because that means that in the future, if at any point there's any type of protocol fee structure, then you might need some different burn functionality for the token itself. So that burn functionality upgrade to the token contract is also something that we're currently working on. But so you have sustainability, you got Providium, and I don't know, I'm hoping we'll hear more about that soon. And then we have ZKnomics. So that's kind of where we are right now, which is we need to get the sustainability sorted, but we need to get momentum. And I'm feeling quite bullish, but it's also there are a lot of people involved in that conversation. But that's a little bit of that. Shelby, do you want to talk about where governance is going, minter mods, and also the quorum stuff, right?
Yeah. So I guess in terms of governance trends and innovation generally, across the space, Rafa and I had a lot of really great discussions with governance teams from other ecosystems during Berlin Blockchain Week earlier this year, and we had a lot of takeaways that we took with us from those conversations. And some of the just generally across the space, a big topic is and has been for a while now, automation. A lot of those discussions are usually focused on AI, how can we use AI to make it more efficient to be a delegate and review proposals and et cetera, things like that. But the automation piece that we are thinking about and what's already kind of baked into the ZKsync, at least token governance process, is the automation of enforceability for different processes, kind of what I was talking about earlier, programmatic enforcement. And also another so the token governance process in ZKsync is already trying to kind of enforce that. How can we automate not necessarily execution of certain things, and maybe in some cases we can, but also automate minting and distribution of tokens to have to rely less on a trusted party to do it manually, for example. So that's like one thing that, over the last few months, Rafa and I have been building the building blocks, I guess, for to enable that type of automation within governance. And of course, also exploring different ways maybe AI could be used in the governance system, but that's kind of more like the general discussion at the moment across the space. And also looking at other ecosystems, just like interesting to see some new experimentation happening in the governance design space. So I think a lot of people talk about or mention the eigen layer council model that they're trying out, which is very different from any of the governance systems that we've seen over the last 5-6 years. The ones that we kind of like know, maybe love, maybe don't love at this point. So that will be really interesting to kind of follow and track and see if there's anything maybe to take out of there. Also in terms of like the optimistic governance aspects of their governance process. Another interesting example is Lido's dual governance that just launched. Which, if you're not familiar, it's essentially allows stakers to have veto rights in their governance system. So they still have like, delegates who like vote on proposals, etc. But the stakers now have like a new role in that governance process that allows them to like veto certain proposals, which is really cool. And if staking is, something that will likely be implemented, to just kind of trying to consider how that would happen, would possibly be something we could also use as a template to implement new, governance rights and voting power, et cetera, stuff like that. Also, of course, the big fun one that people like to bend their brains around is conditional funding markets. I think there's been some discussions on past calls, at least governance, like the delegate calls and the proposal review calls. There's been discussions about conditional funding markets. The Butter team is kind of like leading the charge on that front and seeing how we could experiment possibly with things like that, new tools and mechanisms like that as well. So that's kind of, I guess, just like a broad overview of some of the innovation pieces that we've observed or had discussions with different teams about. But yeah, and
yeah, I would say that on the innovation piece is one comment, Shelby, that kind of comes to mind. I would argue ZKsync in general, like we try to stick to what we know like works, right? Like, and I think we're definitely like looking at a lot of stuff. I think the if I had to choose over the next 6 months what I'd like to see, I don't necessarily think I want to see any changes to the governance system. I just want to see more proposals shipped that really drive Providium and then app chains right into the ZKsync ecosystem. I think that's kind of, it's not really innovation, but like, I think like we want to be able to see new ways that really drive it. I mean, OP really, I think, found a new model with the retroactive funding. You can debate whether it was effective or not, but what is retro funding for ZKsync? Like maybe it's a ZK prize program or something. Like I want to see the thing that is the ZKsync like growth like multiplier. That's the innovation that I want to see.
Yeah, agree fully.
Yeah, it also, just to like repeat it, maybe it, I'll beat the dead horse. I'm happy to, that the token governance system, the Cat Mentor token mechanics system, is literally built or set up to be able to run these types of experiments. Like the Cat Mentors and token mechanics are literally made to plug into these other existing mechanisms or protocols or services that already exist, like either with staking or conditional funding markets, or if it's, different vesting or distribution contracts, different things like that. It's literally built or already set up to basically plug into any experiment that we would want to run. So that's also pretty cool.
Yeah. And then I know, Mad Max, you had a third question. So,
but you already mentioned the burning process should be there in the future. So
maybe we'll see. We'll see. No promises. Like no problem. We'll definitely ship.
From my side, I'm saying this already a year that we need a burning process. So
we do need the token contract to have the burn function. That's definitely true. For Quorum, by the way, there's no plans to change the Quorum. I think right now, just so you know, so we have what we call active voting delegates, and the way that we measure that is it's the total amount of voting power that has participated in at least 2 of the last 5 votes. That number today is around between 900 and 950 million ZK voting. We want that number to be 2 billion. We want that number to be 2 billion, because we want Quorum shouldn't be it should be hard to get to, but we want more people to vote, right, and be fully representative of all the different users and all the different partners across ZKsync. And it's not an easy thing, right? You delegate when you get the airdrop, you often pick a delegate, then you forget about it. It's and then you move your tokens from one wallet to another, and then poof, you're not delegated anymore. So the question is, something that's top of mind for us is, how do we increase that? But that doesn't change the Quorum. Quorum stays the same. We just want more participation and more engagement.
Yeah, practically from my perspective, I think that staking can help in this matter. That if there will be not just delegate, but also be rewarded by fees or something, and then also burn the tokens, I think there will be more interest, definitely.
Mad Max, I have a question for you. All right.
No.
Let's assume you're going to delegate your tokens. You're not a delegate. You're going to delegate your tokens. And let's assume you have staking, and staking gets you whatever 10% return. How much of that yield would you give to your delegates for them to participate in governance? 0?
Normally, yes, but yeah, it's actually an interesting idea that the delegates will also earn on their people they give them power.
Yeah.
It's an interesting concept, definitely.
I think that's an interesting question. So one of the things that we've been,
I would say I give it 2%. Take care of my tokens, be active, make me money, and that's it. I give you 2% if there is 2%.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question, because one of the things that we've been discussing internally is, okay, so delegates are supposed to represent the interests of the token holders, right? If I delegate to you, you're supposed to say, okay, what will Rafa and Shelby, how would they want me to vote? And right now, I don't know. I feel like sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes delegates just vote based on whatever they want, and they don't necessarily listen, right, to the community. And I think we've been asking ourselves, okay, how do we design governance in a way that really truly represents the token holders, which are delegating their token and participating in ZKsync? Anyways, it's just a question that if people listening to this podcast have ideas, definitely post on the forum, reach out on Twitter or whatnot, on Telegram, because it's a problem that we want to figure out.
I also just want to jump in here and say that I think it's often a thing that people forget about when they think about these kind of token utility or kind of expansion of token utility discussions, which is especially in regards to staking, because I know it's been talked about on a few community calls in the past. They just think of staking as staking. They don't think of staking as tool to increase delegation / how it can tie to governance in any way. And I guess that's maybe just like another role or kind of bullet point under the role of the governance team or the ZKsync Association, is to ensure that any discussion or implementation or kind of idea in regards to either token utility or really anything is, also being conscious of impact it could have on the governance system and, the broader ecosystem in general. So yeah, always trying to keep those things in mind. And especially in regards to the staking discussion, it's definitely top of mind for us too.
Yeah, but I will get back to this question because, or if I think about it, and you have 10%, right? 5% is already too much. It's easier for you to make your own delegate profile, delegate to yourself, and do it, right? But if you have 1 or 2%, you think about it like, yeah, I don't have to care about it. Someone take care, and that's it.
Yeah.
So if the percentage is correct, then I think people will use it. If it's like 50-50, it will not work. So that's really my opinion on this.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's an interesting question. It's like, I mean, at the end of the day, look, the governance team, like what we want is a sustainable, secure, like governance system that's like credibly neutral and works by itself, right? You want everything to kind of like, just work. You don't want like a bunch of people having to like intervene and like get in between the stuff. So I think that at least for now, we can probably say today, it seems like it works. But is it sustainable? I'm like, I don't know, right? Like, will everybody still be voting in a year, like, or in 2 years? Like, how can we create a system so that the protocol upgrades keep on ticking along? How do we create a system so that whenever ZKsync has a new product that, people are picking up the phone and calling, to get integrated to launch their own chain, how do we really boost that? And how do we like do that without actually constantly having to intervene? I think we did something really good with the Guardians, which is now the values are really at the core of the governance system. Whereas before you probably would have had to do a lot of manual intervention on the values and mission education. Now it's like really central. I think now we need to answer that same question. Like across a bunch of other stuff. If we launched and we survived a year, which is what's going to happen next year, that's huge. Now can we survive 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 100 years? And that's what I get excited about, is like building these long-term, sustainable and decentralized systems where ZKsync is not, it's not like a 5-year project, right? It's a 100-year project that we want to have in place.
That's awesome. Definitely.
All right, cool.
From my side, I think this was really insightful and everything what I wanted was answered. So yeah, if there is something what you want to add on the end, then feel free to do it.
Cool. Shelby, any last comments?
Yeah, I guess just maybe generally thank you to everybody who has been participating and who, is, showing a lot of, genuine interest and genuine support for ZKsync and also, the success of ZKsync governance. And also just kind of like call out on also the governance team as well. The system was designed with a specific set of things in mind and kind of designed to address other challenges or frictions that we have observed in other decentralized ecosystems. But that doesn't mean that a perfect system was designed and that, there aren't things that can be improved on. We've learned a lot. The governance team's learned a lot since the launch of governance in September of 2024, and we're continuing to add additional resources or clarifications or tooling or whatever is needed for folks, and just like a general like ask to the community, like please reach out to us and like let us know what would be helpful, what else could be added to make things clearer or the process easier or more accessible, etc., things like that. So our inboxes are always open, or drop a comment on the forum, even better, so that others can benefit from the discussion and the learnings from the outcomes of that discussion. So yeah, that would be my final thoughts.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for hosting. We should do another one in we should do another one, but we'll have to wait for hopefully more news, and then
Yeah, definitely. When more things are shipped, we can.
Yeah, more things are coming. All right. Thank you so much, Mad Max.
Thanks, Matt.
Great. Thanks everyone for watching, and thank you again, Rafa and Shelby, for your time. It was really cool.